Dr. Kungmin stared at the glowing screen in front of him. His three eyes blinked slowly as he tried to understand what he was seeing. The numbers and patterns on the display made no sense. They should not exist in any living creature's genetic code. Hannah, come look at this, he called to his research partner. Hannah walked over from her workstation. Her blue skin shimmered under the laboratory lights. She was from the peaceful Aquan species, known throughout the galaxy for their calm nature and scientific minds. Like Kyungmin, she had spent years studying the genetics of different alien species. "What is wrong?" she asked, looking at the screen. "I am running the analysis on the human DNA samples we received last week," Kungmin explained. "The quantum sequencer is showing something very strange." Taeho looked up from his corner of the lab. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Builders, were famous for their engineering skills. But Taeho had chosen to study biology instead of building ships and stations. "Strange how?" Taeho asked, walking over to join them. Kyung-Dashmin pointed at the screen. "Look at these patterns in the DNA chain. Do you see these sequences here and here?" Hannah leaned closer. Her large black eyes studied the genetic code carefully. "These look like ... instructions. But instructions for what?" "That is what I cannot figure out," Kyungmin said. "I have never seen anything like this in any species we have studied. The computer is trying to translate these sequences, but the results make no sense." The 3 scientists had been working together on Research Station Omega-7 for 2 years. The station floated in space at the edge of human territory. It was a joint project between many alien species to study the biology of different races in the galaxy. Humans were the newest species to join the galactic community. They had only made contact with other alien races 5 years ago. Most aliens found humans interesting but harmless. They seemed friendly enough, though they were more aggressive than most species. "Run the deep analysis program," Hannah suggested. "Maybe it will give us better results." Kyungmin typed commands into the computer. The screen changed, showing new data flowing across it. The 3 scientists watched as the computer worked to decode the mysterious sequences in human DNA. After an hour, the results appeared on the screen. Kyungmin read them out loud. Enhanced Reflexes Protocol, Accelerated Healing System, Tactical Pattern Recognition Matrix, Combat Efficiency Optimizer, Berserker Activation Sequence. The 3 scientists looked at each other in silence. None of them spoke for a long moment. "This cannot be right," Hannah finally said. "These sound like ... weapon systems." "Not weapons," Taeho corrected. "Biological warfare upgrades, built into their DNA." Kungmin felt his stomach turn cold. In all his years of studying alien biology, he had never seen anything like this. Most species in the galaxy were peaceful. Even the few aggressive species like the Titan Republic had evolved their fighting abilities naturally over millions of years, but humans appeared to have warfare capabilities programmed directly into their genetic code. "Run the analysis again," Kyungmin said. "There must be an error." They ran the test 3 more times. Each time, the results were the same. Human DNA contained what could only be described as a complete warfare blueprint. "Look at this section," Hannah said, pointing to another part of the screen. "The computer says this sequence controls something called pack hunting coordination. And this one here manages threat assessment and elimination protocols." Taeho was reading another section. "This part seems to control pain tolerance and fear suppression. And look here, there are instructions for rapid muscle development and bone density increases during stress situations." Kyungmin sat down heavily in his chair. "Every human has this in their DNA? According to these samples?" "Yes," Hannah answered. "All of them carry these sequences. But they seem so normal," Taeho said. "The humans I have met are friendly and curious. They do not seem like dangerous warriors." "Maybe the sequences are inactive," Hannah suggested. "Perhaps they are leftover code from their evolution that no longer works." Kyungmin shook his head. "I checked that already. These sequences are not dead code. They are dormant but functional. Under the right conditions, they could activate." The 3 scientists spent the next several hours going through the data. The more they studied it, the more frightening it became. Human DNA contained instructions for turning ordinary people into highly efficient fighting machines. "Look at this," Kungmin said, highlighting another section. The sequence appears. To control group tactics and battlefield communication, humans can coordinate attacks without speaking. And this section here, Hannah added, it manages resource conservation during extended combat. Their bodies can operate on very little food and water when fighting. Tejo discovered something even more disturbing. These sequences here control what the computer calls adaptive combat learning. Humans can analyze enemy tactics and develop countermeasures in real time during battle. As the day went on, they found more and more evidence of humanity's hidden warfare capabilities. Their DNA contained solutions for every aspect of combat, from individual fighting skills to large-scale military strategy. The strangest part, Kungmin said as they reviewed their findings, is that humans do not seem to know about any of this. "What do you mean?" Hannah asked. "I have read their military histories and scientific papers. Nowhere do they mention these genetic capabilities. They fight wars using technology and training just like any other species. But their DNA suggests they could be far more dangerous than they realize." The three scientists looked at each other with growing concern. They had discovered something that could change how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. "What do we do with this information?" Tejo asked quietly. Kungmin looked at the data on his screen one more time. Somewhere out there, billions of humans lived their daily lives, unaware that their bodies contained the genetic blueprints for the most advanced warfare system any species had ever developed. "We report it to the Galactic Council," he said finally. "They need to know what we have found." But even as he said it, Kungmin wondered if that was the right choice. This discovery would change everything between humans and the rest of the galaxy. Once the other species learned about humanity's hidden genetic weapons, would they ever feel safe again? The answer to that question would soon shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The great assembly hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 500 representatives from different alien species sat in their seats, staring at the holographic display floating above the center floor. The display showed the human DNA analysis that Dr. Kungmin had presented just minutes before. Counselor Jun-Seek stood at the speaking platform. His hand shook slightly as he held the datapad containing the research findings. He had read the report dozens of times, but it still made him feel sick with worry. "Are we certain about these results?" asked Elder Yuna from her floating chair. She was over 800 years old and had seen many threats to galactic peace. But nothing like this Yun-Dash belonged to the ethereal collective, a species that had given up physical bodies long ago. She appeared as a glowing energy form wrapped in flowing robes. Her people were the most peaceful in the galaxy. They had not fought a war in over 10,000 years. "The results have been verified by 3 different research teams," Jun-Seek replied. "There is no doubt. Every human carries these genetic modifications in their DNA." A loud bang echoed through the hall as War Marshal Deng Haiyan slammed his massive fist on his desk. He was from the Titan Republic, the only military-focused civilization in the Council. His species stood 3 meters tall and had thick armored skin. "This changes everything," Deng Haiyan declared in his deep voice. "Humans are not the peaceful traitors we thought they were. They are biological weapons waiting to activate." Murmurs of fear and concern spread through the assembly hall. Representatives whispered to each other in dozens of different languages. Some species had never experienced war at all. The idea of an entire race built for combat terrified them. "Counselor?" Minsu raised his hand to speak. He was from the scholar caste of Kepler Prime, a species dedicated to learning and understanding. His people had been studying other races for thousands of years. "You should not panic," Minsu said calmly. "Humans have been part of our community for 5 years. In that time, they have shown no signs of aggression toward other council members, because they do not know about their own capabilities," Elder Yuna replied. "What happens when they discover what their bodies can do? What then?" The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. No one had an answer. Dr. Kungmin stepped forward from the observer section. He had been invited to answer questions about his research. "May I speak?" he asked. Junseek nodded. Help us understand what we are dealing with. Kung Min activated his own holographic display. It showed detailed images of human genetic sequences. The modifications are extensive, he explained. Human DNA contains instructions for enhanced combat reflexes, accelerated healing, tactical thinking, and group coordination. But the most concerning discovery is what we call the Berserker Protocol. What does that mean? Asked Representative Sojin from the Crystal Singers, a species that communicated through musical tones. Under extreme stress or threat, human bodies can activate emergency systems, Kungmin answered. Their strength increases dramatically. Pain responses shut down. Fear disappears. They become perfect fighting machines that do not stop until the threat is eliminated. The hall erupted in frightened voices. Many representatives stood up and began talking at once. Some demanded immediate action. Others called for calm discussion. Dong Han's voice boomed over the noise. We must act before they discover these abilities on their own. A preemptive strike is our only option. You want to attack an entire species based on what might happen, Minsu challenged? That goes against everything the Council stands for. It's better safe than sorry, replied Counselor Haijin from the Defensive Alliance. Her species had evolved from prey animals and always assumed the worst about potential threats. If humans activate these genetic weapons, they could conquer the entire galaxy. Elder Yuna floated down closer to the center of the hall. Her energy form pulsed with concern. I have lived through many ages of galactic history, she said. I've seen what happens when fear controls our decisions. We make terrible mistakes that haunt us for generations. But we have also seen what happens when we ignore obvious threats, Donghae encountered. The Plague Wars, the Silicon Uprising, the Void Incursion. Each time the Council waited too long to act, Representative Boyoung from the Merchant Federation spoke up. What about trade agreements? Human colonies purchase billions of credits worth of goods from our member species. A war would destroy our economy. Better a poor galaxy than a dead one, Haijin replied coldly. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives wanted immediate military action against human space. Others argued for diplomatic solutions. Few suggested simply cutting off all contact with humanity and hoping they would never discover their genetic potential. Finally, Ausi called for order. We must vote on how to proceed. I see three main options before us. He activated a new display showing the proposed actions. Option 1. Immediate quarantine of all human space. No ships in or out. Complete isolation until we can develop countermeasures. Option 2. Preemptive military strike against Earth and major human colonies. Remove the threat before it can develop. Option 3. Continued observation and study. Gather more information before making any major decisions. Up again. I volunteer the Titan Republic fleet for Option 2. We can have attack ships at Earth within 6 months.
This is madness, Minsu protested.
We are talking about genocide based on genetic possibilities, not actual crimes. The genetic modifications did not happen naturally, Dr. Kungmin added quietly. Someone or something deliberately changed human DNA. We should find out who and why before we act. Elder Yuna considered this. It's an interesting point. Yes. These modifications are too complex and purposeful to be random evolution. There is a designer behind them. Does it matter? Ijin asked. Dangerous is dangerous, regardless of the source. The debate grew more heated. Some species threatened to leave the council if military action was taken. Others promised to act independently if the council chose an action. As the arguing continued, Junseek made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. We will vote tomorrow, he announced. But tonight, I am authorizing a covert intelligence operation. We need to observe humans in actual combat situations. We need to see these genetic modifications in action before we decide their fate. The other hall fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Somewhere in human space, a crisis would need to occur. And council agents would be there to watch how humanity truly fought when pushed to their limits. War Marshal. Donghain smiled grimly. Finally, some sense. When can we begin? Immediately, Junseek replied. Agent Soyoung has volunteered for the mission. She will infiltrate human colonial forces and report back on their true combat capabilities. The fate of humanity now rested. On what one alien spy would witness in the heat of battle? Agent Soyoung crouched behind a concrete barrier as laser fire streaked overhead. Her shape-shifting abilities had allowed her to take on human appearance perfectly. For 3 weeks, she had lived among the colonists on Kepler 44b, waiting for exactly this moment. The Crimson Fleet pirates had arrived 2 days ago with 12 warships. They demanded the colony surrender all its rare mineral deposits. When Governor Park refused, the pirates began their attack. Soyoung watched the human defenders with careful eyes. She carried hidden recording devices that would capture everything. For the Galactic Council, this would be the proof they needed to decide humanity's fate. "Giho, take your squad around the left flank," shouted Commander Sujin from behind a damaged hovercar. "We need to draw their fire away from the evacuation zone." Giho nodded and signaled to his 5-person team. Soyoung had been assigned to his squad when she volunteered for the colonial militia. The humans had accepted her help without question, not knowing she was an alien spy. "Stay close and follow my lead," Giho told his team. "These pirates are better armed than us, but we know this territory." The team moved quickly through the rubble-filled streets. Soyoung expected to see the genetic modifications activated any moment. According to Dr. Kung Min's research, combat stress should trigger enhanced reflexes and tactical thinking. But as they ran from cover to cover, the humans seemed completely normal. They moved carefully, checked corners, and communicated through hand signals just like any trained soldiers. Nothing superhuman about their behavior. A pirate drone spotted them and opened fire. Giho dove for cover, pulling his teammate Young-Sik with him. The movement was quick but not impossibly fast. Just good training and natural reflexes. Drone. At 2 o'clock, Giho whispered, "Woo-Jin, can you get a clear shot?" Woo-Jin, the team sniper, studied the mechanical enemy through her scope. "Give me 30 seconds to line it up." Soyoung watched Woo-Jin work. The human woman's breathing slowed and her hands became perfectly steady. Her focus was impressive, but again, nothing beyond normal sniper training. The shot took out the drone with one precise hit. "Nice work," Giho said. "Now let's keep moving." As they advanced through the colony, Soyoung began to notice small details. The humans moved together with almost perfect coordination, as if they could read each other's minds. When one person spotted danger, the whole team reacted instantly without anyone speaking. This matched the group coordination. Protocols mentioned in the DNA analysis, but the humans themselves seemed unaware they were doing anything special. An explosion rocked the building next to them. 3 pirates in powered armor emerged from the smoke, their weapons charging up for another blast. "Contact front, Giho," shouted. "Spread out and find cover." What happened next surprised Soyoung. The human team didn't panic or freeze. They moved with sudden speed and precision that seemed to come from nowhere. Young-Sik rolled left while Woo-Jin went right. Minho and Ha-Young flanked wide. Giho went straight forward, using debris as mobile cover. Their movements were so perfectly timed, it looked like a dance. Each person knew exactly where the others would be without looking. One of the pirates raised his heavy plasma rifle toward Young-Suk. Without thinking, Soyoung shouted a warning. But Giho was already moving, tackling Young-Suk out of the line. A fire before the weapon could discharge, the tackle should have broken both men's bones. The pirate's plasma rifle hit with enough force to melt steel. But both humans rolled away from the impact site and kept fighting as if nothing had happened. Soyoung stared in amazement. Giho's reflexes had been impossibly fast, and Young-Sik had absorbed an impact that should have killed him. The battle continued around them. Woo-Jin's shots never missed their targets. Minho seemed to predict where enemies would appear before they showed themselves. Ha-Young moved through the combat zone like she could see around corners, but none of them acted like they were doing anything unusual. "Push forward," Giho commanded. "We need to link up with Sujin's main force." As they advanced, Soyoung noticed something else strange. A pirate's energy blast had grazed Young-Sik's arm earlier. The wound should have been bleeding heavily. Instead, it was already starting to close. The accelerated healing protocols were active, but Young-sik just wrapped a bandage around his arm and kept fighting like nothing had happened. They reached the main defensive line, where Commander Sujin was coordinating the colony's resistance. So-young counted over 200 human defenders, holding off nearly 1,000 pirates. By all military logic, the humans should have been overwhelmed hours ago. The pirates had better weapons, more ships, and superior numbers, yet somehow the colonists were winning. Status report, Sujin asked when Jiho's team arrived. East sector secured, Jiho replied. Pirates are pulling back toward their landing zone. Good intel says. Their main assault force is regrouping for one final push. They're bringing up heavy artillery. So-young watched the human commander work. Sujin was processing dozens of reports, coordinating multiple teams, and planning counterattacks all at the same time. Her tactical thinking was operating at superhuman levels, but like the others, she seemed completely unaware of her enhanced abilities. The final pirate assault came an hour later. Massive war machines advanced on the colony while fighter ships screamed overhead. The humans should have been terrified. Instead, they fought with calm determination that impressed even So-young. They adapted their tactics in real time as new threats appeared. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they improvised new ones from mining equipment and construction tools. Most remarkable of all, they protected each other with complete disregard for their own safety. So-young watched humans throw themselves into danger to save teammates they had known for only weeks. During the fiercest part of the battle, a pirate missile struck near So-young's position. Explosion threw her against a concrete wall hard, enough to break several ribs. Jiho appeared beside her immediately. "Are you hurt?" he asked, helping her to her feet. "I think my ribs are broken," So-young gasped. "We'll get you to the medical station," Jiho said. Then he did something that shocked her completely. He stayed with her instead of returning to the fight, even though his team needed him. "Why?" So-young asked. "The battle is not over." Jiho looked confused by the question. "You're hurt. We don't leave people behind." As medical personnel treated her injuries, So-young realized something important. The genetic modifications weren't making humans into monsters. They were making them into better protectors. Their enhanced abilities only activated, and they were defending something or someone they cared about. The warfare protocols weren't about conquest or aggression. They were about survival and protection. When the pirates finally retreated, the human colonists cheered and embraced each other. They had won an impossible victory, but they celebrated, like any normal people would. None of them understood that they had just demonstrated the most advanced combat genetics in the galaxy. To them, they had simply done what needed to be done to protect their home. So-young watched them and wondered. If the Galactic Council had been asking the wrong question all along, maybe the issue wasn't whether humans were dangerous. Maybe it was whether the galaxy was ready for what humans were really designed to protect it from. Dr. Wu Jin had spent 3 months digging through the oldest archives in galactic history. His office on the research station was filled with holographic displays, showing ancient data from dozens of different civilizations. Empty coffee cups and food containers covered every surface. He had been assigned to find the truth about human genetic modifications after Agent So-young's report changed everything. The Galactic Council needed to understand who had created humanity's hidden abilities and why. Computer. Cross-reference genetic modification patterns with archaeological records from the precursor era. Wu Jin commanded. The computer hummed as it processed millions of data files. Wu Jin rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working 18-hour days, searching for connections that might not even exist. His species. The archive keepers lived for research like this. They could go days without sleep when they found an interesting mystery. But this puzzle was bigger than anything Wu Jin had ever investigated. The computer finished its search. Cross-reference complete. 17 matches found. Out. Wu Jin sat up straight. After weeks of dead ends, finally something useful. "Display the matches," he said. The holographic screen showed images of ancient ruins from across the galaxy. Each site contained carvings and artifacts that depicted genetic modification techniques. But these weren't random experiments. They showed deliberate, planned changes to entire species. Computer, show me the dating analysis for these sites. Sites date to approximately 50,000 years ago, plus or minus 2,000 years. 50,000 years ago was when the precursors had vanished from galactic history. No one knew who they were or what had happened to them. They had left behind only ruins and legends. Wu Jin studied the images more carefully. One carving showed tall, graceful beings working with genetic sequences. Another depicted the same beings modifying different alien species. A third showed what looked like a great threat approaching from beyond the galaxy. Enhance Section 4 of the Kepler ruins. Imagery, Wu Jin ordered. The image zoomed in on a detailed carving. It showed the precursor beings surrounded by representatives of many different species. Some looked like modern aliens that Wu Jin recognized. Others were completely unknown. At the center of the carving was a species that looked remarkably like early humans. Wu Jin's heart began racing. Computer, compare this species depiction with human evolutionary records. Comparison complete. Genetic match probability, 94%. Wu Jin stood up so quickly he knocked over his coffee cup. The precursors had not just known about humans 50,000 years ago, they had been working directly with them. He opened a communication channel to Dr. Kungmin on the research station. Kungmin, I need you to see something immediately, Wu Jin said when the connection opened. What have you found? Kungmin asked to evidence that humans didn't modify themselves. Someone else did it to them. Within an hour, Kungmin arrived at Wu Jin's office. Behind him came Dr. Hannah and several other researchers. Word of the discovery had spread quickly through the scientific community. Show us what you have found, Kungmin said. Wu Jin activated his main display. The genetic modifications in human DNA match patterns found at 17 different precursors. Archaeological sites. The precursors were modifying multiple species 50,000 years ago. But why? Hannah asked. What were they preparing for? Wu Jin switched to another set of images. These carvings tell a story. The precursors faced some kind of threat, something that came from outside our galaxy. The images showed dark, twisted shapes moving between stars. Wherever they went, planets died and civilizations fell. The precursors had fought against these entities for thousands of years. They were losing the war, Wu Jin continued. So they decided to prepare the younger species for a future conflict. You mean they gave different species different abilities? Kungmin asked. Exactly. Look at these genetic samples I pulled from the archives. Wu Jin displayed DNA patterns from various alien species. Each one showed signs of ancient modification. The ethereal collective received enhanced mental abilities and energy manipulation. The builders got improved engineering instincts and construction skills. The archive keepers gained perfect memory and analytical thinking. What about the other species? Hannah asked. Each one received gifts suited to their nature and role in the galactic community. But humans got something different. Wu Jin highlighted the human genetic modifications they had discovered. Humans received combat adaptability, healing, and protective instincts. But most importantly, they got something no other species received. What? Kungmin asked. The ability to evolve rapidly in response to new threats. Human DNA can rewrite itself when faced with dangers the precursors never imagined. The room fell silent as everyone understood what this meant. The precursors made humans into the galaxy's immune system, Hannah said quietly. That's exactly right, Wu Jin confirmed. But there's more. According to these records, the threat the precursors fought is still out there, and it's coming back. He switched to the final set of images. He showed astronomical charts and star maps with dates and calculations. The precursors predicted the threat would return approximately 50,000 years after their defeat. They designed all the genetic modifications to activate when that time came. Kungmin studied the calculations. 50,000 years from when? From now, Wu Jin said grimly. According to these records, we have less than 5 years before the ancient enemy returns to our galaxy. Dr. Hannah looked at the genetic data, again with new understanding. So human combat abilities aren't meant for fighting other galactic species. No, they're meant for fighting something far worse. something that destroyed the most advanced civilization our galaxy has ever known. The researchers spent the next several hours going through all of Wu Jin's evidence. The story became clearer with each new piece of information. The precursors had been master geneticists and long-term planners. Knowing they would lose their war, they had seeded the galaxy with modified species designed to work together against the future. Return of their enemies. Humans were the warriors of this plan, but they weren't meant to fight alone. Every species in the current Galactic Council had been given abilities that would complement human combat skills. "We need to contact the Council immediately," Kungmin said. "They have to know what's coming." "Will they believe us?" Hana asked. "This sounds impossible." Wu Jin looked at the ancient carvings one more time. They showed the final battle between the precursors and the dark entities. The precursors had lost, but their plan had survived. "They'll have to believe us," he said. "Because if we're right, the galaxy's survival depends on every modified species working together, including the humans." "And if we're wrong?" Hana asked. Wu Jin didn't answer. He was looking at the last image in the sequence. It showed empty space where thriving civilizations had once existed. That was what happened to species that weren't. Prepared when the ancient enemy returned, the galaxy had 5 years to get ready for a war that had been planned 50,000 years ago. Admiral Sun Go stood on the bridge of the battleship New Seoul, watching the sensor readings with growing concern. The combined fleet of the Galactic Alliance floated in formation around him. Ships from dozens of different species had joined, together for humanity's first major command of galactic defense. It had been 2 years since Dr. Wu Jin's discovery changed everything. Galactic Council had spent those years preparing for the return of the ancient enemy, but nothing could have prepared them for what was actually coming. "Admiral, we're detecting massive spatial distortions at the galaxy's edge," reported Lieutenant Yu Jin from the sensor station. "Whatever's out there, it's bigger than our projections suggested." Sung Ho nodded grimly. The human fleet had been stationed at the most likely entry point based on precursor records. If the ancient enemy was returning, they would meet it here first. "Send word to all ships," Sung Ho commanded.
Battle stations is what we've been preparing for.
Across the fleet, alien crews worked alongside human advisors. The past 2 years had seen intense cooperation between species. Human military leaders had trained alien forces in adaptive combat techniques. In return, alien technology had enhanced human equipment beyond anything Earth had ever imagined. The space around them began to change. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as something massive pushed through the barriers between galaxies. "Contact Commander Han Wu on the Ground Forces channel," Sung Ho ordered. "His troops need to be ready if anything gets past us." The communications screen activated, showing Commander Han Wu in his command bunker on the nearby planet. Behind him, mixed units of human and alien soldiers made final preparations. "We're as ready as we'll ever be," Han Wu reported. "The defensive positions are manned, and everyone knows their roles." "Good. Remember what the precursor records showed us. These enemies don't follow normal rules of physics. Be prepared for anything." The spatial distortions grew stronger. Then something emerged from the twisted space that made every sensor on every ship scream warnings. The Void Devourers had returned. They were not ships in any sense that living beings could understand. They were tears in reality itself, moving through space like wounds in the fabric of existence. Where they passed, stars dimmed and planets simply stopped existing. "All ships, open fire," Sun Ho commanded. The combined fleet unleashed everything they had: energy weapons, plasma cannons, gravity bombs, and exotic matter projectiles all struck the lead void. Devourer simultaneously. The weapons passed through it like it wasn't there. "Negative effect," Yujin reported. "Our weapons aren't affecting them at all." Around the fleet, other ships were trying different approaches. The ethereal collective vessels attempted to use their mental powers to disrupt the entities. The builder ships fired complex mechanical projectiles designed to interact with unusual physics. Nothing worked. "Admiral, 3 Void Devourers are heading for the planet reported the tactical officer. "They're moving faster than anything we've ever seen." Sung-ho watched helplessly as the dark entities streaked toward the world where Han-Wu's forces waited. Conventional space combat was useless against enemies that existed partially outside normal reality. But the ground battle was different. "Commander." Han-Wu watched the Void Devourers descend toward his planet like falling pieces of night sky. His mixed force of humans and aliens had spread across the continents, ready to defend key population centers. "All units, remember your training," Han-Wu spoke into his communicator. "These enemies exist in multiple dimensions. Only coordinated attacks from modified species will have any effect." The first Void Devourer touched down near the capital city. Where it landed, buildings simply vanished. But as it began to spread, something unexpected happened. The human soldiers nearby began to change. Private Minho felt it first. A tingling in his blood that spread through his entire body. Around him, his squad mates were experiencing the same thing. Their genetic modifications were activating in ways they had never felt before. "What's happening to us?" asked Corporal Sujin, staring at her hands as they began to glow with faint energy. "I think we're adapting," Minho replied, "just like the DNA research said we could." The human forces began to coordinate without conscious thought. Their genetic programming was responding to a threat their ancestors had never faced, creating new abilities in real time. When they fired their weapons at the Void Devourer, the energy beams suddenly became visible and solid. The entity recoiled, as if struck by something painful. "It's working," Hu Yanwu reported to the fleet. "Human weapons are affecting them when the genetic modifications are active." But the humans couldn't fight alone. The Void Devourers were too large and too powerful for any single species to handle. That's when the true genius of the precursor plan revealed itself. The ethereal collective forces used their mental abilities to locate the entity's weak points. The builder ships provided mobile platforms that could exist in multiple dimensions. The archive keepers calculated attack patterns in real time, and the humans adapted their tactics every few minutes as they learned how to fight enemies that shouldn't exist. "Target the void cores," Han-Wu ordered, as his forces learned the entity's anatomy. Coordinated strike in 3, 2, 1, mark. Hundreds of modified weapons fired simultaneously. The Void Devourer writhed and began to collapse in on itself. In space, Admiral Sung-ho watched the tactical display with amazement. The ground forces are actually winning. "How is that possible?" "Human genetic modifications are evolving in real time," Yujin reported. "They're developing new abilities specifically designed to fight these entities." "Can we use that knowledge to improve our space weapons?" "Already working on it, sir. The archive keepers are analyzing the adaptation patterns and sending modifications to all ships." Within hours, the space battle had turned around completely. Ship weapons began affecting the Void Devourers as crews learned to channel their own genetic gifts through their technology. The battle raged for 3 days. More Void Devourers emerged from the spaces between galaxies, but each one was easier to fight than the last. The Alliance forces were learning and adapting faster than their enemies. On the 3rd day, Commander Han-Wu led a final assault against the largest Void Devourer. His mixed force of humans and aliens moved with perfect coordination, each species contributing their unique abilities to the attack. The entity fell, and with it, the invasion began to collapse. "Admiral, we're detecting retreat patterns from all remaining Void Devourers," Yujin reported. "They're pulling back toward the galactic edge." Sung-ho couldn't believe what he was hearing. "We won? It appears so, sir. The enemy is withdrawing." As the immediate threat ended, Sung-ho realized something important had happened. Humans and aliens had fought together as equals for the first time, not with humans as dangerous unknowns, but as partners in galactic defense. The genetic modifications hadn't made humans into conquerors. It had made them into the galaxy's protectors, just as the precursors had planned 50,000 years ago. But this was only the first battle. The Void Devourers would return, and next time they would be prepared for the Alliance's tactics. The galaxy needed to stay united if it wanted to survive what was coming. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different than it had 3 years ago. Where once fearful representatives had debated whether to destroy humanity, now the same aliens worked alongside human advisors to plan the galaxies. DEFENSE, Dr. Kyungmin, stood at the central platform, where he had first presented his terrifying discovery about human DNA. Today he was delivering a very different report. The genetic adaptation rates continue to exceed all projections, he told the assembled representatives. Human DNA is not just modifying itself to fight the void devourers. It's sharing those modifications with other species through cooperative training. In the front row, President Yoonji of United Earth listened with interest. She had been elected specifically to manage humanity's new role in galactic affairs. The transition had not been easy, but it was working. Dr. Kyungmin, can you explain how this genetic sharing works? Asked Elder Yuna. The ancient ethereal being was now one of humanity's strongest supporters, having seen firsthand how wrong her initial fears had been. When humans and other species work closely together during combat training, their genetic modifications begin to resonate, Kyungmin explained. The alien DNA adapts to complement human abilities, while human DNA learns to work with alien gifts.
Counselor.
Minsu raised his hand. Are there any risks to this process? None that we have detected. The modifications only activate during cooperative activities and only when both species consent to the bonding process. War Marshal Dong Hyan stood up from his seat. The massive Titan had become one of humanity's closest military partners after fighting alongside them against the void devourers. I can speak to this personally, Dong Han said. My own genetic structure has been enhanced through training with human forces. I am faster, stronger, and think more clearly during combat. But I am still completely myself. President Yoonji activated her speaking platform. The key word there is cooperation. Human genetic modifications only work when we're helping others, not trying to dominate them. She looked around the hall at representatives from hundreds of different species. Many of them had fought alongside human forces in the past 3 years as more void devourer incursions were detected and defeated. That's why we're proposing the creation of the Galactic Defense Academy, Yoonji continued. A joint training facility where all species can learn to work together. The proposal had been under discussion for months. Some species were still nervous about the idea of genetic modification, even voluntary modification for defensive purposes. Counselor Jun Sik, who now served as the Council's defense coordinator, activated his own platform. The academy would be completely voluntary, he explained. No species would be required to participate, but those who choose to join would gain access to the most advanced defensive capabilities in galactic history. Representative So Jin from the Crystal Singer spoke up. What about species that are not suited for combat? My people are artists and musicians, not warriors. General Bo Young, the human military advisor, answered that question. Every species has something to contribute. The Crystal Singer's harmonic abilities have proven incredibly effective at disrupting void devourer communication systems. Combat isn't just about fighting, added Commander Heian Wu, who had become famous throughout the galaxy for his successful defense campaigns. It's about coordination, communication, logistics, medical support, and dozens of other specialties. The debate continued for several hours, but the tone was completely different from the fear-filled discussions of 3 years ago. Now the representatives were discussing how to work together, not whether humans should be destroyed. Finally, Elder Yuna called for a vote. All in favor of establishing the Galactic Defense Academy. The result was overwhelming. 12 species voted against the proposal, and most of those abstained rather than actively opposing it. The motion passes, Jun-Sik announced. Construction will begin immediately on the Academy Station. After the session ended, President Yoonji met privately with the key council leaders. The formal meetings were important, but the real work happened in smaller groups. How are the deep space monitoring stations performing? She asked Admiral Sungo, who had been promoted to head of Galactic Defense Forces. It's better than expected. Sung-ho replied. We're detecting Void Devourer scouts almost a year before they reach inhabited systems. That gives us time to prepare coordinated responses. And the response times, asked Dong Hyan. Average deployment is now 6 days from detection to full defensive fleet arrival. reported Captain Eugen, who had become Sung-Ho's chief of staff. The mixed crews are working perfectly together. Elder Yuna floated closer to the group. I must admit, 3 years ago I believed humanity would destroy galactic civilization. Instead, you have saved it. We all saved it, Yunji corrected gently. Humans alone could never have defeated the Void Devourers. It took every species working together. Dr. Kyungmin, who had been quietly reviewing data on his portable display, looked up with a concerned expression. I'm afraid our work is far from over, he said. The latest intelligence suggests the Void Devourers are adapting to our tactics. They're becoming more sophisticated with each incursion. How much time do we have? Asked Minsu. Hard to say. Maybe 5 years before they mount another major invasion, maybe less. The group fell silent as they considered this news. The galaxy had grown comfortable with its string of victories against the ancient enemy, but the threat was still very real. Then we'd better make sure the academy is ready quickly, Yunji said. How soon can we begin training the first mixed units? 6 months, replied General Boyoung. We already have volunteers from over 50 species. Good. And Dr. Kyungmin, I want you to continue monitoring the genetic adaptation process. If the Void Devourers are evolving, we need to evolve. Faster. As the meeting ended, the leaders went their separate ways to continue building the galaxy's defenses. But they all understood that something fundamental had changed in galactic civilization. For the first time in recorded history, hundreds of different species were working together as true equals. The fear and suspicion that had divided them for millennia was being replaced by cooperation and mutual respect. 6 months later, the Galactic Defense Academy opened its doors. The first class included young beings from over 100 different species, all training together to protect their shared home. In the Academy's main training hall, human instructors worked alongside alien teachers to prepare the next generation of defenders. The students learned not just combat techniques, but also cooperation, communication, and the kind of trust that made genetic bonding possible. Cadet Hansel, young human from Earth, worked through a tactical exercise with his mixed species team. His partner was a crystal singer named Harmonious Dawn and an ethereal named Bright Thought. Remember, the key is not to fight as separate individuals, their instructor called out. You must become one organism with 3 different types of abilities. As they practiced, Hansel felt the familiar tingling that meant his genetic modifications were activating. Instead of just enhancing his own abilities, the modifications were connecting him to his teammates. Through that connection, he could sense Harmonious Dawn's perfect pitch perception and Bright Thought's ability to see energy patterns. In return, they could access his tactical thinking and rapid adaptation skills. Together, they solved the exercise in half the expected time. Excellent work, the instructor said. You're ready for advanced training? As the cadets left the training hall, they talked excitedly about their progress. They came from worlds hundreds of light years apart. They were becoming something new together. Something that the precursors had planned 50,000 years ago was finally taking shape. Not just modified species working separately, but a true galactic community where different abilities combined to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The Void Devourers would return eventually. But when they did, they would face not just humans with combat genetics or aliens with specialized gifts. They would face a unified galaxy where every species attributed their unique strengths to the common defense. And for the first time since the ancient war began, the galaxy had a real chance of winning.